Allora, se potete prendere posto, inizieremmo con un brevissimo mio saluto per darvi il benvenuto all'Accademia dei Lincei. E in realtà non ce ne sarebbe bisogno perché c'è il Presidente Emerito Quadrio Curcio, ma il Presidente è molto attento ai valori formali e mi ha chiesto di salutarvi come Presidente pro tempore. Per me è un piacere perché, come sapete, da quando è stato Presidente dell'Accademia Alberto Quadrio Curcio, l'Accademia si è impegnata fra i suoi temi centrali a quello dello sviluppo della presenza delle donne nell'Accademia e anche nella scienza e conseguentemente nella società. Stamane ci sono stati i funerali del Presidente Napolitano e devo dire che in uno dei discorsi che sono stati svolti dal Presidente Amato è stato ricordato anche quanto abbia insistito Giorgio Napolitano sulla questione femminile, sulla questione delle donne. Io però ho già parlato troppo e vorrei dare la parola, proprio per i motivi che ho appena detto, la presenza femminile in Accademia, alla Presidente della Commissione Pari Opportunità dell'Accademia, Benedetta Craveri.
Grazie Presidente, preciso che sono ormai Vicepresidente e on behalf of the Committee of Equal Opportunities and of its President Marta Catelani, I'm welcoming you as our distinguished guest. And I seize this opportunity to state my personal profound admiration for your work. In the society we inhabit, images have surely become the fastest and most powerful way to convey information. Thus, I cannot imagine neither a better nor a more compelling way to tell us these extraordinary stories of outstanding women than through your excellent documentary films. Welcome and thank you for being here.
I am really honored to give some opening remarks to the event which we are going to participate. I will speak in 3 languages. One is English. I try to speak English. The other is Globish, which is the English spoken by those who doesn't know English, Globish. And finally, I speak Italian, which is, of course, my native language. Having said that, I thank warmly Professor Antonelli, who immediately accepted my proposal to have here this important docu-film, very important indeed. And this is not so usual because Lincei have a long history to choose what is worthwhile to be presented in this room, So many thanks to Professor Antonelli, and many thanks also to Benedetta Craveri, who has been for 3 years the chairman or the president of the Equal Opportunity Commission, doing a lot of work. I remember that 3 or 4 years ago, or maybe more than that, Jennifer Thompson and Tonya Blowers came here because Accademia dei Lincei gave the prize, a prize, to Jennifer Thompson. And Jennifer Thompson and Tonya Blowers came to the Equal Opportunity Commission. So in a certain way, they are member of this large family. Having said that, and because every one of us is anxious to follow the presentation of this docufilm, I say just 2 or 3 words. I get in touch with the OWSD being in the board of the TWAS, which is the Third World Academy of Sciences. But at that time, I think it was 2018 or 2019, I don't remember exactly, I was really impressed by what OWSD has done and is doing. In my long experience of academic life, I don't tell you my age because it might be, it would be in a certain way embarrassing for me. I consider this initiative unique in its characteristics, unique. And so I started to speak with Tonia Blowers, and going more and more into this organization, I received the splendid proposal, of which I was honored, to become ambassador of the OWSD. And in fact, in my CV, I always put this as one of my main job and results. I cannot, of course, I don't want to speak about OWSD because Tonia will explain much better presenting the docufilm. But I want just to mention three or four success, very important success. Everyone knows that OWSD is for women scientists, especially in STEM, for the Global South. The Global South. I prefer to call now Global South for many reasons. And 30 years, in 30 years life, is 30 years, Tonia, 30-year life, he reached very important objectives. Sometimes I think that I don't really understand how, with a limited quantity of resources, important, but, well, what we call the productivity of OWSD is impressive. The productivity. Being an economist, I try always to put some economic word within my speech. In the past 30 years, the program of OWSD for women in science promoted and got it seems to me so big, 540 PhD supported this success. Com'è, Donia? Yeah. 36 Master of Sciences and 91 Early Career Fellowship, which means that the three main activities of OWSD, PhD, Master, and Early Career Fellowship, got very important result, very important result. Of course, OWSD received important contribution, being a UNESCO project, not so much, I think, from UNESCO, probably. I think it should do much more, UNESCO. It's my opinion, Tonia, it's not your opinion, it's my opinion. but as indirect support, may I say that, from the Italian government, indirect support, it would be nice to have a direct support from the Italian, because the Italian government supports Third World Academy of Sciences, which is settled in Trieste, and in a certain way, there are some external economies for OWSD. But two big grants of financing has been delivered. One is from Sweden, and the other is from Canada. I don't remember exactly the contribution of these two democracies, states, and so on. My fear now is that in this dramatic situation might be reduced the contribution, because there is inflation, there is the war. I mean, it's a very difficult situation. And for this reason, I am quite, how do you say, confortato, Tonia, come si dice confortato? Ecco, it's a pleasure to see here a representative of the Italian government, not only Dr. Garbellini, ma la dottoressa Maria Cristina Langella. I hope she is here. Buonasera, signora. Buongiorno. Because this is a clear sign, indication, that there is an interest of the Italian government in this initiative. I think that Italy, which often in the highest representative of the Italian democracy, talk about the Global South, talk about the way to support the Global South, all these things. But between the words and the action, there must be a bridge. And I think that I hope that the Italian government might give an help to OWSD. I don't say anything else, but I want to mention two collaborations I had with Tonia and Jennifer Thompson. I am the editor-in-chief of the journal who has, like me, half of the title in Italian, Economia Politica, and the other part of the title, Journal of Analytical and Institutional Economics. This is a kind of globish. And we wrote 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, an article explaining what is OSW and why OSW is extremely important for the development of the Global South. An economic journal speaks about development. Development doesn't mean only the growth of GDP, but means the health of population, means the education, all these things. And this article is, up to now, the second in the ranking of the download, which means something. Will mean that the Economist has considered it worthwhile to read this article. And the second collaboration we had is the special issue, Women, Pandemics and Global South, which was published last year. And the chairman of the guest editor was Amartya Sen, a name that everyone knows, and the more active engine of the guest editors was Bina Agarwal, who is an Indian economist, political economist, I would say, which I think that if the Nobel Prize should consider something which is outside the mainstream. Bina Agarwal deserved it. She got the Balsam Prize, which is an important prize, but I think that that is a person and the economist who deserve many acknowledgement. Finally, when we had the General Assembly in 2021, Tonia was 2021, we had a speaker, Cristina Messa, who has been the Minister of University. We had Fabiola Gianotti, who is the General Director of CERN. We had Bina Agarwal, I just say about Bina, and we have Carrozza, who is now is the President of National Research Council, which means that these colleagues were aware of the importance of OWSD, and I hope that this afternoon every one of us will understand and would be convinced that it is a very important initiative for human development. Sorry to have been so long, but I have spoken Globish, which is my language, more or less. And thank you, Tonia. You should come here. Come, please. Oh, sorry. We have the representative of the Italian government, la dottoressa Maria Cristina Langella. Buonasera, dottoressa.
Salve, buonasera a tutti. Come preannunciato dal professor Quadrocurzio, mi accingo a leggere il messaggio del sottosegretario Maria Tripodi, che purtroppo non è potuta essere qui presente, ma ci teneva a divulgare il suo messaggio. Illustri ospiti, gentili partecipanti, desidero congratularmi con l'Organization for Women in Science for Developing World per questa iniziativa e con l'Accademia dei Lincei per ospitare questa serata in una cornice così prestigiosa. L'Organization for Women in Science for Developing World non è solo la voce della scienza nel sud del mondo, ma è soprattutto la voce delle donne scienziato nel sud del mondo. La scienza costruisce pace, contribuisce allo sviluppo sostenibile, crea ponti attraverso una rete di conoscenze condivise e di uguali opportunità per tutti, abbattendo stereotipi di genere. Sono questi i valori portanti dell'organizzazione, della World Academy of Science che la ospita a Trieste e di cui l'Italia è fiera sostenitrice. I loro progetti di ricerca, programmi di studio e opportunità di carriera sono l'evidenza tangibile che assicurare le stesse possibilità può favorire un progresso scientifico a vantaggio di tutti. Il governo italiano è estremamente attento alla promozione dell'uguaglianza di genere nell'ambito della cooperazione scientifica bilaterale e multilaterale. Il Ministero degli Affari Esteri e della Cooperazione Internazionale ha istituito il premio Science She Says per premiare 5 scienziate al di sotto dei 40 anni, provenienti da altrettante regioni geografiche, che svolgendo le proprie ricerche hanno notevolmente contribuito al progresso della scienza e della tecnologia. Lo scopo è quello di promuovere il sapere delle donne in ambito scientifico e di mettere le loro ricerche al servizio della comunità scientifica mondiale. Ogni anno la Farnesina conferisce il premio Rita Levi Montalcini, che nel premiare un progetto di cooperazione scientifica tra Italia e Israele ricorda l'impegno e il ruolo guida di una donna che ha saputo sfidare i pregiudizi, fino a divenire una figura di riferimento non solo per il mondo scientifico, ma per tutta la società. Anche la nostra cooperazione allo sviluppo è impegnata a sostegno di iniziative per la parità di genere, incluso in campo scientifico come il progetto We Star, dedicato alla formazione di biotecnologhe provenienti dal Corno d'Africa. Ma non possiamo ignorare che purtroppo ad oggi le opportunità in ambito scientifico, sociale, economico e di accesso all'istruzione non sono le stesse in tutti i paesi e che ci sia ancora una grande disparità tra nord e sud globale. Contribuire ad appianare il più possibile questo dislivello è una nostra priorità, in linea con gli obiettivi di sviluppo sostenibile delle Nazioni Unite. In particolare, creare un ponte con le nazioni africane è uno dei principali obiettivi della nuova strategia per l'Africa, Rafforzare i legami con quest'area del mondo, inclusa la condivisione delle conoscenze scientifiche e tecnologiche, ci permetterà di trasformare una situazione di crisi in un'opportunità di sviluppo. Tra poche settimane, il 5 e il 6 novembre, Roma ospiterà il vertice Italia-Africa, con il chiaro obiettivo di rilanciare il partenariato politico, economico e culturale, con un continente il cui sviluppo è cruciale. A poca distanza dalla conferenza di luglio sulle migrazioni e lo sviluppo, questo importante appuntamento conferma l'interesse per un tema assolutamente strategico, che caratterizzerà anche la presidenza italiana del G7 il prossimo anno. È in questa cornice dunque che si collocano iniziative come quello odierna ed è in tale ottica che il Ministero degli Affari Esteri e della Cooperazione Internazionale ha con piacere concesso il proprio patrocinio. Con l'augurio di continuare a costruire ponti e a rafforzare il legame ancora fragile tra donne, scienza e sviluppo, vi ringrazio per l'attenzione e colgo l'occasione per rivolgere le mie sincere congratulazioni alle donne che hanno partecipato a questo progetto. Grazie a tutti.
Buonasera a tutti, è veramente un onore essere stati invitati a stare qua. Io inizierò in italiano e poi andremo a parlare in inglese perché abbiamo il nostro ospite in inglese e ci sono altre persone nella stanza che parlano, credo, solo in inglese, però possiamo anche sempre tradurre se c'è bisogno, credo. Facciamo un po' di tutto. Veramente queste parole sono state molto commoventi per me. Penso che dovete essere tutti d'accordo che era una decisione veramente sensata scegliere il professor Alberto Quadriocozzo come il nostro ambasciatore, che lui ha fatto veramente un lavoro per noi che non so dire, non so spiegarvi quanto ha fatto per noi e quanto crede in noi e ci dà anche veramente un valore a livello a livello accademico molto importante anche. E questo io devo dire personalmente anche che io sono qua in Italia da 10 anni ormai ed è bellissimo sentire queste parole da tutti voi su quanto è importante questa organizzazione per l'Italia, che io credo che veramente è un win-win situation, si dice in inglese. Ci facciamo bene a vicenda. Voglio anche veramente ringraziare l'Accademia dei Lincei per l'ospitalità e per il presidente Antonelli che ha voluto anche parlare qua. Voglio anche ringraziare Alessandro Gabellini che è qua con noi dalla MAICI, che anche sento suo appoggio e ci aiuta tantissimo. E Francesco Leopardi che è qua nella stanza dall'Aspin Institute Italia, che anche fa un importante contributo all'OWSD e in particolare hanno scelto Mary come rappresentante per loro quest'anno e dopo parleremo con lei. Bene, non voglio parlare troppo perché di solito parlano tanto bene le donne nei film e poi immagino che voi avrete anche tante domande da fare dopo, quindi vogliamo che loro... questo è il nostro modo per dare la presenza e la voce qua. Quando possiamo cerchiamo di avere le persone proprio di persona che possono parlare, però i film sono un modo magnifico per dare la voce alle persone che spesso non vengono sentite. Quindi, due parole sull'OWSD. I think now I'm going to switch to English. Is that okay? Please raise your hand if we speak too fast, or sometimes the accent might be a bit difficult to follow. Yeah, so let me know if we're speaking too fast. So the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, as Professor Quadriocozzo said, is 30 years old this year. And it's been 25 years that we have been awarding PhD fellowships. They're called South-to-South fellowships, and the idea of these fellowships was really to counteract brain drain and to ensure that these wonderful women scientists in the South could travel to other countries within the South and share their knowledge and do a kind of double capacity building action. And you'll hear the stories in the films today as well about women who have had huge opportunities to stay in the global north, to stay in the US, to stay in Europe, where they would certainly have had easier scientific lives, they would have had more resources, and they give very good explanations about why they needed to return home and the kind of contribution they make once they are home. As Professor Quadrio-Curzio also mentioned, we have been funded for the past 25 years by Sweden, Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency. They have had to cut their funds this year because of different government priorities, as we're all aware of the very many demands at this present time. We are hoping very much that we will be able to continue with this wonderful program, which is really making a big difference to the lives of many women and to the countries in which they work. We've had 560 graduates from that program. And one thing I would just like to tell you about that program, we can talk about it afterwards, you can ask us any questions you like about it. One statistic that is extremely impressive, I think, is that we probably have the lowest dropout rate of any PhD program in any country, in anywhere in the world. It's less than 10%. And we're talking about women from the very poorest countries, so the only women eligible for our programs come from least developed countries or countries that have been defined as having very few scientific resources. So the fact that they have a very low dropout rate, I think, is really testament to their enthusiasm and dedication, and also to the knowledge that we have built up over the years on how to retain women in science, because that's the task. There are very well-known dropout points. You've probably heard of the metaphor, the leaky pipeline, where many more women often come into undergraduate programs than men, but as you go along the career trajectory, as you go into the higher status, as you get better paid, women tend to drop out. And there's different points along the way where they drop out. And OWSD has developed programs, strategies, and procedures at each of those points to just give additional support just when it's needed. A lot of that support is around the kinds of tasks and expectations women all over the world, including in Italy, of course, have around childcare, around responsibility for education, around responsibility for health of children they look after, elderly people they look after, disabled family members that they look after, the nutrition that they are responsible for in families, the preparation of food, the use of energy in an economic way, all of that kind of housekeeping, which is often trivialized and certainly is not monetized, is a massive, massive contribution to the well-being of all of us around the world. What that means for women scientists is that they bring first-hand knowledge, frontline knowledge of the challenges that huge numbers of people in the community are facing. They have first-hand experience and they want to find solutions to challenges, because it changes their own lives and the people around them. That's why it's important that women are scientists. And this is what you'll see over and over again in our projects and in the women that speak in our films, that they have always got their communities at heart. they are always thinking about how the science that they do can make a difference, can have an impact. And what we also try and do is bring it into the economy as well. So how can these kinds of projects, these inventions become sustainable? How can you link with industry? How can you create a dynamical system where you are innovating, producing, and generating money for your own needs? So that was a bit of a digression. I didn't really tell you much about our programs, but we basically have 4 pillars. The underlying pillar, and when Professor Quadrio-Corsi again mentioned our productivity, and he said, I don't know how you do it, there's not very many of you. Well, we do have a fantastic staff. Is Julia here? I can't see Julia, Signori. Who has helped organize this whole event and has been in contact. Julia, hello. Very young, very dynamic, extremely committed, doing masses of work. Thank you so much, Julia, for your contribution. And we have other 8 staff members in Trieste, in Italy, who are working incredibly hard for the organization. But the reason that we can do everything that we do is we have 9,600 members throughout the Global South. And when there are more than 20 members in any one country, they can set up what's called an OWSD national chapter. We have currently 52 national chapters in countries throughout the South. If you are from the Global South, if there's anybody here from the Global South and you want to know if there is an OWSD national chapter, there very probably is. What this means is that women in the chapter get together and they say, what do we need? What are our challenges? And it will change in each country. Of course it will. We call ourselves women from developing world, but of course each different country has different challenges and has different achievements and successes. They will say, our particular issue is sexual harassment at the university. What shall we do about it? They might say, well, let's bring in the vice-chancellor, let's bring in the supervisors, let's have a workshop. Another country might say, well, our difficulty is actually that we are not allowed, we don't have enough time because we've got so many family commitments and so many social commitments. In Sudan, for example, every Saturday is spent, if you don't have, for some women, if you don't have henna on your hands, then you can't go out. It takes 3 hours to put the henna on your hands. That's time that could be spent studying, right? There's lots and lots of challenges that we're not aware of as well, that are not spoken about. But at OWSD, we know about those things. We are told about those things. We are informed about those things. And we bring them back into our programs. So that's our main bedrock is the community. We've already talked about the PhD fellowship, which is really focused on mobility. Your country doesn't have enough resources. You need to move to another country that does have the resources so you can get the expertise. The hope is that you return to your country and you bring that knowledge back and you start to build up the knowledge there. The third is capacity, and that's the early career program that we're going to talk about with these films. And the fourth is visibility, which we're also going to talk about through these films. So that's my introduction to OWSD. Please do ask any questions as we go through if you would like to. And I'm going to pass on to Nicole Leghisa, who is from Trieste and has been working with OWSD for, I think, well, OWSD and TWAS and the Centre for Physics around 10 years, making films about scientists, building up a real expertise in what does a scientific story look like in film. And she's been working with us on a really exciting project, and that's what you're going to see here, and Nicole's going to tell us something about that now.
Parlerò in italiano. Non mi capita spesso di fare presentazioni in italiano. Va bene, Tonia? Perché appunto questo progetto di cui i film che vedrete sono il frutto è un progetto che è stato presentato in giro per il mondo l'ultima volta a dicembre al World Science Forum a Cape Town E per me è un po' una gioia poter presentare questi film in italiano e anche avere per la prima volta i sottotitoli in italiano. Vedrete 4 video, di cui 3 realizzati con un programma di trasferimento, diciamo, di conoscenza e esperienza, la mia come filmmaker, a ragazzi che fanno comunicazione o ricerca, ragazzi e ragazze, nel Global South, nel sud globale, quindi nei paesi in cui OWSD opera, e in particolare ragazzi e ragazze che vengono proposti, sia venendo dall'ambito scientifico che dall'ambito della comunicazione, dagli hub di OWSD nei vari paesi. Quindi l'obiettivo del progetto è quello di creare una rete di filmmaker che raccontino storie di scienziate nei loro paesi, affinché ci sia sempre più visibilità per queste donne scienziate che si occupano, come diceva Tonia, di avere un impatto nelle loro comunità, e soprattutto affinché la loro voce venga ascoltata e si possano esprimere per se stesse, cioè senza dei tramiti. Quindi i video che vedrete durano 5 minuti all'uno, quindi sono molto abbordabili, diciamo, e sono tutti stati realizzati con un grande lavoro di script, quindi di lavoro sulla storia. Hanno tutti una protagonista, donna, scienziata. Ci sono diversi paesi e diverse discipline. Diciamo che quello che ho cercato di fare è anche di trasferire il mio modo di raccontare le storie, che è un modo, se vogliamo, human-centered, cioè c'è sempre l'uomo al centro. Quindi in questo caso, diciamo, sì, human, l'ho tradotto male, sì, donna. In tutti i casi che vedrete si cerca di raccontare anche la scienziata. Quali sono le motivazioni che hanno spinto queste persone a fare scienza e qual è l'impatto che vogliono avere. Quindi loro come donne e poi le loro comunità. I film sono stati realizzati in diverse tornate, più o meno lavoro 4 mesi con ognuno dei ragazzi e ragazze che partecipano, non perché lavoriamo assiduamente ogni giorno, ma perché ci sono dei tempi anche per assimilare tutta una serie di informazioni che hanno a che fare con la creazione della storia, come si approccia un protagonista, come si sviluppa il racconto di una storia dall'introduzione allo sviluppo alla fine. Abbiamo lavorato insieme sulla preproduzione, come si organizzano le riprese, sulla tecnica di ripresa. Alcuni hanno girato con dei telefonini, come vedrete, altri con delle telecamere, ma l'importante è che tutti hanno portato a termine la loro storia e che ora hanno la capacità di raccontarne altre. L'obiettivo è quello di dare risorse di comunicazione ai national chapter di OWSD, quindi alle loro scienziate, ma poi anche come un'onda che si propaga all'Accademia a cui fanno capo e anche ad altre scienziate del paese. Mi ero segnato un sacco di cose da dirvi, però poi penso che i film parlino molto per se stessi. Queste donne hanno moltissime cose da dire, sono veramente motivate e anche molto preparate. Quasi tutte si sono formate in Occidente, poi hanno deciso di tornare nei loro paesi per aiutare lo sviluppo delle loro popolazioni. Si occupano di biotecnologia, energia rinnovabile, epigenetica, fertilizzanti non nocivi alla salute. Sono tutti argomenti che sono al centro anche degli obiettivi di sviluppo delle Nazioni Unite, ma anche penso di tutti noi. Io passerei.
Prima di far partire il film volevo solo presentarvi Mary, così sapete chi è. This is Mary Adjepong, who has come to visit us from Ghana, from Kumasi in the south of Ghana, and she will be talking. We'll have a conversation after the next 2 films, and Mary will let us know how those 2 films relate to her own experience as an early career woman scientist in Africa.
Quindi vedremo il primo video, racconta le avventure di una biotecnologa in Nepal È stata una Early Career Fellow, quindi la storia ruota al tipo di progetto che è stato finanziato da OWSD. Buona visione.
Namaste, I'm Pratibha Pandey. I am a researcher and a science entrepreneur. I did my PhD in chemistry and nanotechnology from Northwestern University in the US. And currently I am focused on doing research on value addition of medicinal and aromatic plants of Nepal. After the devastating earthquake in Nepal in 2015, my husband and I decided to come back to Nepal sooner than later to start experimenting innovation and sciences in Nepal and see what can be done. Food waste is an alarming global issue where 1/3 of the food is wasted worldwide. Fruits and vegetables account for 45% of that waste. Looking at the context of Nepal, 37% of the total fruit production is shared by citrus fruits, and at least 10 to 15% of that citrus fruit is wasted. Most of the citrus fruit waste are dumped in landfill as well as in water resources, which creates huge environmental issue related to greenhouse emissions, which causes health issues for people. It doesn't only have health implications, but also has environmental, economic, and food security issue due to citrus fruit waste. Through OWSD funded Early Career Fellowship, my plan is to add value to the waste from citrus fruits, specifically orange and lime, by extracting highly valuable bioactives, which is therapeutically active chemicals, to have their uses in pharmaceutical industry, nutraceutical industry, and also cosmetic industries. This research project is being conducted at Research Institute for Bioscience and Biotechnology, RIB. We have 3 very talented researchers in our team who have been supporting us with this research for value addition in 3 different segments of the project. Currently, we are sampling fruits waste from Kathmandu Valley, from fruit vendors as well as farmers. We're also collecting fruits and waste products from Palpa, Gulmi and Rupandehi, which are at different geographical regions and elevations, to look at the impact of geographical conditions on the expression of bioactives in these waste products. After coming back to Nepal and while doing this research project, some of my huge challenges were to find the right collaborations, finding the right equipments to do analysis the way we had designed the project, as well as finding the right researchers to conduct the research. As a woman scientist, the biggest challenge is not technical. It is an adaptive challenge where the society has to be ready to give an environment for women to prosper in sciences, whether it be at home or in your organization. Even the national as well as organizational policies are lacking gender lens and inclusivity, because of which there isn't a conducive environment for women to grow in the field of sciences. However, this is a great opportunity for us to mentor and train the researchers. And it also presents us opportunity to collaborate and also utilize the limited resources we have in the best way we can. Science and technology is not prioritized in Nepal, and there is only less than 0.3% budget allocated for science and technology. To ensure there is higher research budget as well as priority given to emerging technology, a lot of us are directly involved in policy making processes as well. As one of the council members for STI implementation plan, we have ensured 3 key changes in the implementation plan. First is to increase the budget to at least 1% for science and technology, to incorporate gender lens and inclusive innovation in the process, and also to have provisions to accelerate emerging technology, especially in the advent of fourth industrial revolution. So this is my break time, so just a minute, I'll call my daughter. She's with the nanny who's supported by OWSD funded project as well. When I travel, I hire her, or when I'm in lab, I hire her. At RIB, we make sure that there is good distribution of male and female researchers. We also give opportunities for women in decision-making roles, as well as we are changing the HR policies to make it more conducive for women to grow in the field of science and technology. To address the issue of limited infrastructure as well as collaboration, RIB has come together with 2 other research institutes this year in a campus called the Biomedicum. Even though it looks small, the kind of research we're doing here is related to photonics, cancer cell biology, as well as biotechnology. Early Career Fellowship also emphasizes mentoring researchers and students so that their scientific capability is grown. After being a part of this project, 2 of my researchers have gotten full scholarship to pursue their PhD in immunology and virology in reputed universities in the US. And this is a huge asset for the country as well, because these researchers plan to come back to Nepal after their training. After I received Early Career Fellowship, my legitimacy, visibility, and formal authority in research, in entrepreneurial sphere, as well as to make meaningful changes in the policy document by being involved with the government. Conventionally in extraction, tedious processes like toxic solvents and high temperatures are used, which is in fact even more harmful than trying to value add to the waste products. In our proposed green method, we are proposing to use non-toxic solvents like water and ethanol, which are also low cost and readily available at room temperature, so that we're not using high energy to add value to waste products for economic gain, as well as to alleviate the environmental issues associated with it. I chose this research project specifically because it fits really well in the context of Nepal, where we have huge waste problem and haven't been really doing value addition of any kind in plants, especially for scale-up. So there's a huge potential for scale-up of this research. It's a low-cost technology, green technology, which is readily accessible in Nepal, and also it can have huge economic impact for the country, as well as all the stakeholders involved in the fruits and vegetable value chain in Nepal. This project can also be implemented not just for citrus fruits, but with small interventions. We can use this outcome for other fruits and vegetables, as well as medicinal plants in Nepal. What drives me to embark on the continuous scientific journey is seeing the possibility of leveraging science and technology to accelerate the prosperity of the country. I find it very fulfilling that I am involved in the process of creating a leveled playing field for both males and females to embark on this scientific journey that I have gotten into as well. For me, science is not just about what it can do today, but how it will shape the type of just and prosperous world that I would like our future generations to thrive in. And that is why I love doing what I do.
Non so se avete notato che Prativa è incinta durante le riprese, però voleva tantissimo fare questo video, ha detto no, lo voglio fare assolutamente, e ha partorito, e poi ha voluto, cioè ci siamo messi d'accordo che era una bella cosa anche avere proprio la bimba, è una bimba, 2 femmine, appena nata nel video. E Sudin, il filmmaker che ha partecipato al progetto, sta adesso facendo con noi un secondo video, e da 2 anni a questa parte ha messo su proprio una società di produzione. Adesso sono in 11. Lui dice sempre che in Nepal è più facile fare le cose che qua da noi, che per quello sono in tanti, però insomma è stato bravissimo. Diciamo che non è solo merito del lavoro fatto insieme, però sicuramente gli ha dato più coraggio. E quindi stiamo lavorando su un altro ritratto. Mentre adesso vedremo un lavoro fatto nella Repubblica del Congo. La protagonista è Mary Adjepong, è una fisica di altissimo livello che lavora sull'energia rinnovabile. Sì.
The Republic of Congo is really rich in energy resources. We have the most powerful river in Africa, Congo. But we are still lacking energy supply for all the population. We need to move toward the renewable energy in order to stabilize our economic and, of course, impact the development of our country. I'm Dr. Mary Adjepong from Congo-Brazzaville. I'm a lecturer in physics and a lab manager to a research laboratory. I'm an experimental physicist researcher. My PhD work was mostly based on surface characterization using advanced electronic microscope. To date, I'm still working on this field, but when I decided to come back in Congo, I shifted a little bit my research interest. So now I'm still an experimental physicist, but working in material science and in energy. We are working to develop hybrid systems from different renewable energy resources like biomass and solar panels. We focus on 2 types of biomass, the one called Algae and Ledermania. And those kind of biomass are found in the Congo River. The choice of those biomass is also based on the fact that they can easily be put into artificial culture, and this will definitely solve the issue of algal bloom from the Congo River. So because we have this problem in our river. And in order to provide affordable and clean energy distribution to Congolese community. It was really a struggle at the beginning because you know that if you would like to do practical work, you need to have equipment. So I knew that since I came back home, so I knew that I would have a problem of equipment, but I wanted to have this challenge on me. The OWSD has really helped me a lot on my research career. While I was implementing the project, it has helped me on building a team because I was able to pay my students, I was able to pay my collaborator, and also I was able to pay sometimes child care when it was needed. And also get a kind of credibility to the international community. I believe in a place where in Congo we will be using research to develop ourselves. We'll be using research to help our country grow. So when we finished our project, we didn't stop there. Okay, we found everything, we wrote paper and that's it. No, we used our design to bring it to Mbano Island because there the clinic does not have any electricity. So we provide them with electricity. We provide them not only the clinic, but also the school. We provide electricity to the police station. And for me, it was more than a joy to see people using affordable and clean energy, electricity. Now they are sure they will not go across Brazzaville in order to have some vaccine or to have some medicine. Children could read during the night with the electricity, and this is just a win-win for me. And this is where I always say to people that the research is not only for the laboratory, but it's to be used also for the population and see people enjoying that. And this is why my team and I are really working very hard to let not only our government to understand the importance of research, how it could impact on the development of a country, but we will not stop there. We will collaborate not only back home, but we collaborate with other African countries in order to understand that something could be done not only in Europe or in USA, but something could be done also back home, back in our country, back in our Africa, back in our land, and it's possible. Until now, I'm the only physicist lecturer in the Republic of Congo. I need to be a leader for other women. I need to be another leader for other young girls who would like to work on the field of STEM. So this is for me. I could not stop there. I always use my passion in order to do better and to continue to do better.
Maryse ha tradotto il video in francese, cioè ha fatto i sottotitoli in francese e l'ha mostrato questi sono aneddoti però interessanti per capire un po' anche l'esito di questi video, e l'ha mostrato a delle persone, dei policy makers del suo paese, e non solo questo ma anche questo l'ha aiutata a spiegare in che cosa poteva essere utile finanziare dei progetti di ricerca, e questo l'ha portata in questo momento a diventare una persona importante nel suo paese. Forse di questo vi può dire qualcosa Tonia.
Sì, prima lei è diventata policy advisor to the Minister of Science and Technology, and now she's just she's just got a job as executive director of a bioenergy company in Brazzaville. So, yeah, and she does say that the film has really helped her. We've had some very interesting conversations with Maryse's supervisor at the Center of Physics in Trieste. She also spent some time in Trieste about this film in particular, because I don't know if you know anything about the International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, but as you can tell by the name, it's all about the theory and the very sophisticated nature of the science. And Maryse is a highly sophisticated theoretical physicist. But what she chose to describe in her film was not rudimentary as such, but it certainly wasn't, she wasn't describing the sophisticated concepts that her supervisor, was disappointed that weren't there, and she was very, very clear that for her the point of the film was to communicate and was to have an outcome, and that's what happened with that film. It is a difficult balancing act, science communication, in terms of how do you go from something that by its nature is a niche, it's a sophisticated, extremely complex analysis and understanding of a very specific topic that perhaps there are 3 other people in the world who know it like you do. How do you go from that to getting other people to just understand a little bit about what you do and why it's important and the impact it has? And a lot of people are afraid of dumbing down. At the same time, the more people that get that energy and understand the importance of science through clearer films is also important. So we're thinking about that now as well in these next developments of the film project. How do you also convey the sophistication of science, but then it maybe becomes a didactic film about the science itself, and we're trying to do something a bit more encompassing. So before we go on to talk to Mary about how those films have an impact on her, I just wonder, because you've all been sitting here for a long time now, if there are any questions from the audience about what you've seen and heard so far. Or shall we just go straight on to Mary, and then I'm sure you'll have more questions after. And
no, just to start, your country is Ghana.
Yes, my country is Ghana. I'm from Ghana.
Yeah, which is also in Italy very, at least for my age, is very well known.
Okay.
Because Nkrumah was, in a certain way, the father of Ghana.
Yes, that's true.
And he was a very enlightened person. I don't want to go into politics, but and so you could also it's not compulsory to answer to me, but the memory of Nkrumah is still important in Ghana because Nkrumah was really very well known. I thought that Nkrumah studied in France, probably in Paris, as far as I remember. And he has also important links with some personality in Italy. And so this is, probably a wrong question, but in my young life, I have a clear idea of the role of Nkrumah in Ghana. You are not obliged to answer. If you want to answer, thanks. Otherwise, thanks.
Yeah, I agree with you. Dr. Nkrumah did a great job in Ghana, and the impact of what he did in Ghana can still be felt. Because if you look at Ghana, we have a lot of developments when it comes to even hydroelectric power that's been generated, and all that serves as a basis of science and technology. So basically, Nkrumah did a great deal of work when it comes to science and technology in my country. So you are very right about that.
And isn't that the name of your university also?
Yes, so I'm from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. So my university was actually named after Dr. Kwame Nkrumah.
And so that's a very nice way to introduce Mary, because Mary she did her undergraduate and basically her university career in Kwame
Nkrumah University of Science and Technology.
And then she went to the States, to Michigan State University, to do a PhD on human nutrition. And chose to come back to the same university where she's now lecturer in biochemistry and biotechnology. So before you maybe comment on the films, Mary, perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about your research and how you got to do it, how you got there.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy for this invitation, Sonia. So I'm working with children. So there are a number of children who are living lives below their mental and intellectual capabilities in my country. So I am working on how to improve diets of children. So we are assessing essential fatty acids and carotenoids, and also how we can make food-based approaches, complementary feeding products, so that we can improve growth, cognition, that's intelligence, and also vision in children below 5-year-olds. So that's my research area. And I actually started in Michigan State University, where I made some exploratory studies back in Ghana. So there I was in Michigan. I took all my data in northern Ghana. And after that research, I decided to do something to help the people of Ghana, because yes, I published manuscripts, but I told myself there was little use of my manuscript if it didn't impact the people of Ghana. So I decided to propose and also implement interventions to help Ghanaian children. So that's why we are here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And just watching those films, so one of them is obviously based in Africa, a completely different country from yours, but on the continent, and the other is in Nepal, in Asia. Two very different women in two very different contexts. Was there anything in particular that resonated with you in those films?
Yes, yeah, in those two, I think that I have a similar story to tell when it comes to what they shared with us today. So the first thing is they were all schooled outside of Ghana, outside of their home country, and they had to come back. And for me, this is important for me because upon completion of my PhD, there was an option. I could have decided to stay in the US, but I felt that I was going to make a lot more impact if I came to Ghana to help the people of my country. So taking that bold step, leaving the comforts of your PI and coming to Ghana is a huge step, and I can identify with that. Then secondly, when it comes to the science and policy of our countries, we realize that there is little budgeting that goes on in that, and I can also identify with the same thing in Ghana. Then also as an early career researcher, one thing that resonated with me the most was the fact that you want to make an impact, but you don't have resources to do that because you come, and there is little linkages. There's a little linkage between PhD and also fitting into the faculty position if you come back from your home, if you come overseas. So basically, the Early Career Fellowship gives us the opportunity, gives us some funding, it gives us leadership training for us to fit into our careers very well. So I also resonated with that as well.
And I wanted to ask you the question, and then I was waiting for the answer in public, because I know it's going to be shocking. If you could tell us something about what does it mean to be a lecturer at your university in Ghana? How many students do you have? What is your teaching load?
Okay, so my teaching load, so yes, I teach master's students and also undergraduate students. So I can have a class as small as 17 students, and I can have a class as big as 350 students. So that's my teaching load. Then when it comes to research, currently I have about 17 plus, maybe 30 students supervising at various levels, undergraduate and masters in research. Yeah.
And that's one of the possibilities of the Early Career Grant, which is a very flexible grant. The idea is that you can use it, you can kind of pick and mix, and you can say, what do I need at this point in order to continue doing my research at international level back home? And that might be, I just can't do it with all this teaching load. How on earth can I be a high-level researcher when I've got this massive teaching load? So perhaps I could hire a teaching assistant, I could get somebody to do marking my exams. So it's a very flexible grant. It depends on what the needs are in the different places. Do you want to say anything more about the specific challenges that you've faced and how perhaps something like this grant has solved those challenges for you?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so like I mentioned earlier, for you to set up a lab in my country as an early career fellow is difficult because you don't have the funds, you don't have the capacity. So the early career fellowship has been of immense contribution to my career. So in my first year as a lecturer in KNUST, so that's the short form of my university, KNUST, I applied for a number of grants and I didn't get any of them. So I told myself, what could I be doing wrong? I can't be doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results, right? So I had to go back to the drawing board, assess what I was doing wrong, and luckily I saw OWSD and I was able to win that grant. And we have a number of challenges. So the main thing is capacity to set up labs and also the leadership training. This year in May, we had a wonderful training for about a week, and I learned so much about leadership and how to step out of your shell and go and make an impact out there. So these have been challenges and setbacks, but with the help of the grants, I've been able to come out to do what I really love to do, making an impact. Thank you.
And before we go to questions, I just want to say as well that we've had some fantastic news about Mary's success, which I think is in part also to the visibility that she's getting from having this fellowship. Do you want to say something about the Nature Award?
Okay, so yes, so maybe let me say a little bit about how it started. So on the International Women's Day, March 8th, I got an email, and it was someone asking me to apply for a grant, an award. And I was asking myself, why me? You know, where do you know me from? How did you get my email address? Okay, so I didn't know I was out there. At that time, I had already won the grant. So I am grateful to Aspen Institute Italia for the publicity, and I'm also grateful to OWSD for the publicity, because for someone to even get my email address to tell me to apply for a grant, for me, is a great thing for me. Well, I did a due diligence. I applied for the award, and I was listed as the top 5 scientists by Nature. By Nature, yes, so that's the good news I have to share. Then there's also another one, still on the low key, another funded by UNESCO. I won that one, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful. It's been good for me, and I'm happy about the visibility. Thank you.
And I think the visibility is a topic that we want to talk about later, but let's hand over to the audience for any questions. Francesco, please, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you to Professor Quadricurzio for hosting this event. Thank you, Tonia, for making things happen. And thank you, Mary, for the enthusiasm, and to Nicole for give a narrative for this wonderful story that are so providing not only impact, but they are so challenging for any one of us. So, Aspen Institute Italia is very proud to have been able, given the information that Professor Quadricurzio provided us about this wonderful opportunity to support a fellowship, and Mary was chosen by the organization to be the one that had the opportunity to be sustained by our financial support. Broadening what it's our view of science. Aspen is a non-profit organization that has been founded in the US in the late 50s, and among others, Richard Feynman, important physicist, was one of the boosting an endless dialogue about science. Last year, Aspen, all around the world, was issuing a global report on pure science, strongly backing the idea of financing more and more pure science after even the experience of COVID. Going back to these global issues, we feel that Global South is indeed a wonderful challenge to be for any one of us, given the similarities and the differences that bind us. So here are the questions that I have to put to Mary, if I may. First of all, regarding the differences that are striking me, you are a biologist, you're working in life sciences. What is striking differences between us, the West, and West Africa? It's demography. You usually talk about children, while on our side we have a shrink of the birth rate, and on the other side a strong aging population. So I am very interested in seeing your perspective on what does it mean for you as a scientist, the increasing birth rate in Ghana and West Africa, and what are the main challenges that it poses to your research. The second point, instead, it's something that binds us. The title of this session is food security. This year, for the first time in Italy, the Agriculture Ministry has been called Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, because we feel that we have problems in food security due to climate change, to increasing prices worldwide, and so on. Given your action in your country, what do you feel that are now the main challenges regarding food security for your country, for your job, and what can be done? Thank you so much to anyone for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you very much for the question. So the first question, yes, we have a younger population when you compare that to what you have in Europe, because we have a number of children. And the truth is that there are a number of children who are living lives below their mental capabilities and actually their physical capabilities, evidenced by nutrition stunting, children who are too short for their age, and also children who are not doing so well intelligently in schools just because of the lack of food. Okay, so this is a huge challenge in my country, and some of them have what we call vitamin A deficiency, where it's accompanied, or the main symptoms are night blindness. Okay, and some of these conditions are irreversible. And if they are irreversible, it means that when children cross a certain age gap, okay, and we are not able to intervene at the right time, the child can be maimed for life. That's the reason why it's good that we propose and implement interventions in rural communities. And usually the interventions we are proposing are sometimes not even too far from them. Because last month, I was in a population where I'm doing my research, and we realized that they had all the food ingredients growing in their fields, but they were not sure because of lack of information, illiteracy, etc., cooking methods, among others. They were not even sure how to make the foods for it to be as nutritious as it has to be to feed their children with. So this is one of the problems in my country. And also, this problem is centered in the north of Ghana. If you look at the whole of Ghana, 20% of children are stunted. But the population I went to, the prevalence of stunting is 33%. That is quite high. And I'm also working with vulnerable populations. So I'm doing another research where I'm assessing stunting in children of head potters. You may not be used to them, but they're a certain group in my population. And you realize that wasting level, that's children who are too thin for their height. Okay, wasting levels in the population is 11%, but wasting levels in these vulnerable groups is over 30%. Okay, so you realize that we have a lot of, so this doesn't, some of these statistics may not apply to the whole of Ghana, but there are a number of vulnerable groups who need these interventions more than the others, and that is the focus of my research. Then for your, I don't know if I've answered your first question. So for the second question about food security, for me, I think that the food security challenge, we should look at handling it from a multidisciplinary approach, because I'm a nutritionist, but I realize that everything that happens about our food, from the time that we have the seed to the time the food lands on my plate, is important. Looking at the soil scientists, looking at the crop scientists, the plant breeders, looking at fertilizer application, looking at even food waste. We saw that here. Every part of it is important. So if we can come together and collaborate so that we can have more impactful research, because as a nutritionist, if I have to handle the problem from my perspective, it will so be skewed. I'll just look at what you have on your plate, and that is it. But if I collaborate with the climate scientists, and the climate scientist is advising or speaking to the people in the population, the climate scientist can even advise the people on which kind of crops to grow because of the climate change problem in the world. So I think that if all scientists across the globe or in Ghana come together, or around the globe, we all come together with a multidisciplinary approach in solving the problem of food security, we are going to have an impact, and we are going to have the change we need. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mary. I think we have time for one more question before we need to go to the films, because I know that we have a very hard stop at 7 o'clock today. That's right. So, please, your question.
Thank you very much. My name is Materima Shao. I'm from the Embassy of South Africa, and thank you very much for the invitation. This is very, very interesting. I just have a question for Mary. I'm impressed that there are so many women who are taking up science as a subject, because you and I are from Africa. We know what happens. Most of the children are not able to go to school. So if you go to school, it's a plus. Now, I'm curious about your 300 and more people that you are teaching. What percentage of those are women? And secondly, if there are more, what do you think makes the sciences more attractive? Because there are many countries on the continent where we still have women not having any interest to study sciences. They take other subjects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, so interestingly, when you come to my university, especially in my department, we almost have a balanced ratio for male and female. And I think I'm not sure of the statistics, but I've heard people talk of the fact that sometimes the female students are even more confident than the male students because of the impact we make, or because of the investments or the special trainings that female students have. So I've had some colleagues who have said that we have to bring back the balance, because now it looks like initially it was male, female, and now it's female, you know? So it looks like the female gender is kind of on top. But the interesting thing is that they drop off. There is a leakage. I think Tonya talked about it. That's the most important thing we want to talk about today, because they may be proportionate at this point. Maybe 50, maybe if 51-49, the 51 is in my department. 51 can be for the females and 49 can be for the males. But with time, during master's, PhD, you realize that people fall off. And we have a number of programs in Ghana. I've benefited from a number of such programs, science, technology, mathematics, education, to encourage girls to take up science. Because a story I don't share it much, but all my brothers did science. I have a brother who is a medical doctor, a pharmacist, and two brothers who are mechanical engineers. So initially the idea was for me to do something else. Everybody is doing science, so do something else. But I realized I had already developed the passion to do science already, because I was reading all the chemistry books, you know, at my leisure and all. But I had to convince my parents I wanted to do science. So what you're saying is very true. Sometimes they want us to do something else apart from science because they think science is difficult for the girl child. So we are getting there. We are getting there. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, there are big differences between disciplines as well. I mean, for whatever reason, biology is usually, there's usually more women in biology in most countries, and then mathematics, engineering, computing technology are very poorly represented by women. And you need to make some kind of very specific actions to affect that balance. So I think if we want to get through the next two films, we would need to go on. So maybe I'll just say something briefly about the first film that's coming up. This is Rana Dajani from Jordan. So we're going to another part of the world, another region. And she's actually a chair of the Jordan National Chapter. I talked at the beginning about the national chapters. So this is the only film that we're showing today that doesn't have an early career fellow funded by OWSD as the protagonist, but she is the chair of the national chapter, which basically means everything she does for OWSD, she does for free. And among many of the things that she does, as you'll see in the film. And maybe, Nicole, you want to say a bit more about that film?
Dunque, adesso switchiamo un po' anche per il pubblico italiano. Il film che vedremo adesso invece è ambientato in Giordania. La protagonista Rana Dajani è una biologa che si occupa in particolare di epigenetica, quindi lavora su quale possa essere l'ereditarietà del trauma anche attraverso diverse generazioni, partendo dallo studio in popolazioni che sono state forzate a spostarsi dai loro territori per motivi di guerra o motivi religiosi. Quindi partirei col terzo film su Rana Dajani.
I grew up reading a lot, and I used to also read anything that I could get my hands on. I read National Geographic, Scientific American, and I would spend a lot of evenings with my father discussing the questions that I had about those articles and just reveling in, you know, what are the newest scientific discoveries. And it's through those discussions in the evening where the seeds of wanting to become a scientist were planted. My father was a physician/scientist as well, and I think that innate curiosity inside me, fostered with those evening discussions, is what got me interested in science and wanting to be a scientist and to discover the answers to the questions and to discover nature around me. My research is in two main areas. The first one is I study the genetics of ethnic populations in Jordan. In Jordan, there are two populations, Circassians and Chechens, who were forcibly evicted out of their own countries because of religious persecution 150 years ago, and they've settled in many places. One of them was Jordan. My curiosity also led me later on making even more observations when there was the multiple waves of refugees that came and settled into Jordan, whether it was the Palestinian refugees that came in 1948 and then again in 1967 and continuously, or after the war in Iraq and now Syria. So Jordan has been a haven for refugees, and that led my curiosity to try to understand the experiences that the refugees go through in terms of trauma and war and displacement, how that impacts not just their mental health, but whether it is transmitted across generations in terms of epigenetics. Epigenetics is a new field of study. It's how the environment impacts your DNA expression. And the question that I wanted to ask that nobody had asked before, because of the complications of designing such experiments, was can an epigenetic signature of trauma on a particular generation be transmitted across multiple generations? We know that it happens in mice, but nobody's been able to actually prove it or show a causation in humans, and that's what we're actually doing now. So there are a number of interventions that work on reducing the stress, and these really focus on the human-human relationships. So whether it's doing group work or working with families or community, and that's why my program, We Love Reading, is one of those where somebody is reading aloud to a child, whether it's a parent or a caregiver, and that human-human interaction, that eye contact, that bonding over a book is what helps the child and the parent deal with the increased levels of hormones and reduce that kind of stress. And part of what we do is saying that through evolution, we have evolved to cope with trauma, not just in a negative way, but also in a positive way. How are we resilient? How do we maintain our resilience in the face of trauma? And so one of the things we're doing is trying to understand the positive side of the impact of trauma and how do we survive. As a scientist, I do experiments in my lab and taught at the university with my students. However, I also looked and observed the community around me. And because of my curiosity, I realized that children don't read for fun. I grew up reading, and reading made a huge difference to my life in terms of widening my imagination, allowing myself to dream, giving me words to express myself. And I thought, if children would have that experience growing up, they would have more confidence in themselves, more empathetic with others, and could dream much bigger and wider. And so I sought to find the reason why don't children read for fun in Jordan. And by the way, it turns out that it's not just in Jordan, actually in many places around the world, even though children know how to read, they don't love to read. And I found out that the way to help a child fall in love with reading is if there's a parent or a caregiver that reads aloud to them, a role model, who enjoys reading as well. And that's how We Love Reading started. So I gathered the children in my neighborhood and started reading aloud to them once a week in the local mosque. And this was a family project. My children were involved, and my husband, and the whole neighborhood as well. And for 3 years, I did trial and error, kind of what today is called human-centered design, or I call it evolution, until I got reduced the program to the most empirical formula where the least input with the maximum output. And that's how We Love Reading came to be. And even in my personal life, I think trusting myself, believing in my gut feeling, believing that I am worthy, and that it's okay to make a mistake, it's okay to fail. And I will learn from my mistake, I will learn from my failure, and I'll keep on continuing. It's not that nobody is going to ever make a mistake, it's just you make a new mistake. And I think embracing failure, embracing being uncomfortable, and moving forward with a smile and saying, that's okay, I learned this today, tomorrow I'll learn something else, to me is the best way I have dealt with that challenge of my personal life. And it's about being simple again, it's about being a child again. I think that's what we forget. We all want to be adults, when really just going back to being a child and enjoying what we do and doing things because we enjoy them is the most important lesson I have learned.
I'm sure Nicole would love to say something about how that film was made as well, but we don't have so much time, so I'm going to go straight to introducing the next film, so all of the films you've seen so far have been part of the OWSD Visions project, which Nicole has directed, conceived, created the whole curriculum. It's an online curriculum as well as, it's a huge amount of work. It's one-to-one tutorials, it's group tutorials, it's looking at script production together, it's looking at all of the pictures, really thinking about what works visually. It's a massive job, and I think the results are quite wonderful, as you've seen. The next film is actually produced by the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company. And the reason we have this film is because the protagonist is another of the OWSD Early Career Fellows, this time from Malawi. And we submitted, we saw a call for interesting stories of scientists that was being run by the BBC, and we submitted the story that we knew very well of Elizabeth Banderson from Malawi, whose story we felt really had what Nicole has been teaching us for years. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end, a very powerful story with a message. So the BBC got the story ready-made, and then they created, you'll see the film, and we'll be very interested also in your comments. And I think what's interesting, going back to the beginning of this session and thinking about economics and sustainability, we can't ever make a film like that again. We made an economic contribution to this film, which was equivalent to, I think, 12 of the films that Nicole has been able to make, working with people from around the world. So let's show this film.
I see a reflection of my dad a lot because he also has a gap tooth like I do. So we were very close. It started with my dad wanting to make a difference in people's lives and helping people. That's the whole motivation. So after I lost my dad, I wanted to do something different to make sure that people don't lose their loved ones the way I did. Not being exposed to anything that would be harmful to their lives, knowing that my dad died from chemical exposures because of the kind of work that he was doing. So I was so desperate to try to save lives, maybe in a hospital, but then I realized there's a bigger way I could do it by maybe helping people eat safer food, live in a safer environment. And that's the whole motivation of my science. I just want people to live in a better world. My mother tells me that I was a very curious child, and the most important question I always ask myself is why? Do things happen the way they do? So it's not easy, I would say, to be a woman, a young girl in Malawi, because you're exposed to a lot of challenges. Most girls get married so early. And I also think that because of the way our society handles girls, some of them have issues with confidence at school. They would find it okay to fail and not to do other things simply because they're girls. The expectations on the young girls are quite lower than they would be on a young man. Expectations as into how far you can go, expectations as into what kind of jobs you can take, what kind of careers you can pick. I was probably sitting on a leaf and became one of the things that I had to catch. So I got a grasshopper. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the jar. I am what I am today because I had mentors. They saw the potential that I had and tried to nurture that and help me grow in it. They kept on pushing me and say, although no one has ever done it in the country, but you can still do it. system, which is the gustatory system. When the insect touches the surfaces that have been treated, I wanted to look at one of the most important things that Malawi relies on, that's agriculture. The pesticides we spray on our crops, we actually eat them directly. You can see here a cabbage plant that is almost not palatable for someone to buy and eat. So this happens quite a lot to a lot of farmers who do not have an idea on how they can control the pests in the field, so they end up losing much of their crop, and that's a threat to their livelihood as farmers. We are always competing with insects. Could it be possible that I could also explore the sense of smell in insects and how can it be used in agriculture to reduce the toxins? You don't actually need all that chemical to spray it on your crop. Small concentration would actually steer or move insects away from your crops without killing them. So my inspiration came in to reduce the chemical exposure, and we leave the environment as stable as it's supposed to be. How has Organization for Women in Science in the developing world helped me? The first thing is they helped me stay in my country and do the science I wanted in my country without needing to travel abroad to do it. And more importantly, they have exposed me to networks I never imagined I would have. We also have established the Academy of Sciences in Malawi. I think Malawi is rich with scientists. But we are richer when we're well connected with the world. The whole reason is to bring passionate scientists together, boost their confidence that we can do this thing, but more importantly, provide evidence-based advice to the government that is independent and very objective, that would help the people and also move the country's development forward. I think for me, mentoring is not just a duty, but it's a moral obligation that I need to help someone become a better version of themselves. Even if they don't choose to become entomologists, but at whatever they do, they need to do it the best. So when you're looking at the olfactory system, you're actually taking... I'm looking forward to a generation of the next scientists who will dare the odds to do the impossible things and not be afraid to explore unfamiliar fields of science. I would be very proud of myself that maybe my dad would be happy that I've done something that could help people live a better life.
BBC is good.
So we do have still some time for any questions or comments from the audience. Yes, please.
I have had one of the most interesting and also from emotionally point of view, since many years. I think it's impossible to make a kind of summing up, absolutely impossible, because words are unable to express feeling in a proper way. But I take the courage to say that I have seen 6 elements. I'm saying that is an appropriate way to summing up, is to learn, to teach, to do research, to be aware that you belong to a human community. You don't do research only because you can get a university position, which is important after all. It is important. But this idea that education and sciences are crucial for human development, for giving to everyone a possibility to have a good life, at least, is really what, in my opinion, makes this afternoon, for me, something that if I can have the short video, I can have it, certainly. I think I look at it often, because this means that science is important, but not only because being a scientist you can have a very good profession, a good salary, and all these things. Science is important because education is connected to science, the health of people is connected to sciences, and after all, the civilization is connected to sciences. So many thanks for having given to me a very emotional, touching afternoon. Many thanks indeed.
Thank you so much for those words. And we did have another question from here.
Faccio anche un switch all'italiano, se mi permettete. Innanzitutto ringraziare voi e una domanda specificamente a Nicole, già che abbiamo parlato tanto della visibilità e il metodo che abbiamo usato, proprio i loro materiali, se magari quanti, noi abbiamo visto oggi 4, quanti altri materiali ci sono già elaborati, e se magari anche si può pensare, potete pensare in un format diverso che possa arrivare per esempio a festival e avere una visibilità ancora maggiore. E poi una curiosità particolare, perché ci tocca, siamo in rappresentanza dell'ambasciata cubana, se Cuba è presente nel OWSD. Grazie.
Allora, finora abbiamo fatto una quindicina di video con questo. We did 15 videos more or less up to now. Sto lavorando ad altri 4 più 4, quindi saranno 8. There will be other 8 at the end of the year. No, I think mid-March next year. Penso che dare visibilità a questi video il più possibile sia proprio la cosa migliore, perché penso che molti non sappiano, cioè che non si pongano neanche la domanda di che scienza si fa in certi paesi. Non si vedono molte donne fare scienza in quei paesi. I don't know if I have to translate, maybe for you. I was saying that visibility is very important, and that as many persons could see this kind of videos, the better, because people, especially in Europe, we don't imagine that there are scientists, women scientists, doing science in those countries, and I think it changes a lot the stereotype. Sì, anche per cambiare un po', rivoltare un po' lo stereotipo che c'è su questi paesi, e il ruolo della donna anche in questi paesi. Ho risposto tutto? No, Cuba.
Secondo me possiamo chiedere a Giulia se vuole rispondere sulla Cuba.
Thank you. I think currently the national chapter in Cuba is being settled up. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I think the works are ongoing. So as Tonya probably has mentioned before, we need 25 people from Cuba who are OWSD members to set up a national chapter. And so I think Cuba is actually undergoing the process of setting up a national chapter. And as probably was mentioned before, having a national chapter makes it way easier also to do visibility work and communication work, including the OWSD Vision project. So maybe 2024 or 2025 can be the year where we have a first OWSD Vision video from Cuba, hopefully.
I also mentioned you, Julie, because you've lived in Cuba for some time, so I was... question, please.
Well, very short one. How do you ensure the sharing of best practices among these groups of women so they can create bigger projects and maybe make better solutions?
Are you talking about the films or?
No, I'm talking about the projects and the possibility they can share more so they can make networks and create.
That's a really good question. I think we could do better on that particular question, but what we do have is, so each year for the Early Career Fellows, for example, we've just selected this year's Early Career cohort, and there are 30 women. And Mary has just come when did you come? Just in May. Mary was part of the last year's cohort, and they all came to Trieste. So every year, all of the Early Career Fellows that are selected come to Trieste, and they meet each other. And obviously there they find many things in common. Maybe Mary can speak to that. So a lot of networking happens there. They're at a similar stage. They find allegiances in their disciplines. We, through the national chapters we encourage the national chapters to be based at national academies of science, which, whenever it's possible, gives them a link to what is usually quite an exclusive network. They have a kind of way in. They also get experience of managing and being on executive boards of the OWSD national chapter. So that whole experience of being a leader, they've already done it, so that they kind of understand how to go into the much more exclusive kinds of groups that can give them the access up the ladder, if you like, because we know it's all about opening doors, it's all about contacts. The national chapters, again, are really, really good at providing mentoring support, at supporting writing grant applications. There's a lot of that going on. The networking. I don't know if Mary, you want to say anything. If OWSD has given you any network in particular.
Yes, OWSD has given me a number of networks. So I was a member, but before I got there, I won the Early Career Fellow. I didn't even know there was a WhatsApp group. So once I left Trieste, I was added to the group. So once in a while, there are opportunities that are posted if you are interested. Then I've also gotten to meet other senior scientists. And because we all can identify with OWSD, you're able to walk to someone's office, ask a question, and that has been beneficial, because sometimes if you don't have a common ground with someone, sometimes it's difficult to speak to them or even walk to their office, but OWSD has given me that platform, at least in my university. Then also with the other Early Career Fellows, there were about 25 of us, and I still have connections with some of them, and it's amazing. There was an opportunity I wanted to apply for this year. Maybe next year I'll apply for the stuff. The things were just too much, but one of them was willing to guide me through that application because it's something she has done before. So it's good. The visibility and the connections, very wonderful. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Our timing is impeccable. It's 18:59. Would you like to have the last word, Professor?
Well, as I said before, many thanks to all, many thanks to OWSD, and I hope that in a very different way we might support OWSD in order to go on with this mission. So, as far as I can guess, we have to spread everywhere, in Italy also, information on OWSD. That's all. Thanks for this splendid and emotional afternoon. And I see tomorrow Mary Adjepong, because she got the scholarship of Aspen Institute Italia. Dr. Leopardi is here with us, and he is a very big help for this success of Aspen Institute Italia to have chosen you and giving to you a scholarship. I think that Dr. Leopardi agrees with me, and so I see you tomorrow.
Sure.
Thank you all for coming and for staying interested. And if you would like to know anything more about OWSD, please ask, or you can just write to OWSD@owsd.net and you'll get an answer.